The attack did not come with warning or build up. It dropped into the moment like a stone through glass, sudden and sharp. She had been moving through the hallway with the same calm pace she carried everywhere, not rushed, not distracted, just present enough to notice the usual noises around her. Voices, footsteps, the hum of a place that never really slept. Nothing suggested danger. Nothing hinted that a simple turn of her shoulder would put her inches away from people who had already made up their minds to cause trouble. They watched her the way people watch someone they assume will not fight back. That slow, smug sizing up. That quiet confidence that comes from never having been tested. She caught one of them glancing her way, but it felt like background noise. People stare. People judge. People make quick stories up in their heads about strangers. She had no reason to think this story would involve her ribs meeting someone's knee. She remembered shifting her bag, adjusting the strap. Normal. Forgettable. And then it happened. A shove from the blind spot at her left side. Quick enough to cut her breath, hard enough to throw off her balance. Before she could regain her stance, the second hit came. A knee drove straight into her ribs with the kind of force that tells you this was not an accident. It was deliberate, chosen, executed by someone who believed she would fold the way most people do when confronted with sudden pain. The impact sent a shock through her torso, a tight, burning jolt that spread across her side and stole a full inhale from her lungs. The sound it made was small, but inside her it felt like thunder. She did not freeze, and she did not panic. She simply paused long enough to understand the moment she was now standing in. For a second the world narrowed to the echo of that hit. That sharp pressure, the tightening along her ribcage. She identified the pain, sorted it, placed it in the part of her mind where discomfort waits for instruction. The people who attacked her laughed. That short, ugly noise people make when they think they have power. They assumed she would drop her bag, raise her hands, back away, plead, crumble, do anything except what she actually did. She straightened her spine. She centered her weight. She did nothing else. That alone was enough to throw them off balance. The hallway felt different now. The air heavier. The floor under her more defined. She noticed details she had ignored seconds before. The distance between her and the nearest wall. The angle of their shoulders. The spacing between them. Who led, who followed, who hesitated, who hid insecurity behind a smirk. Training had taught her to read these things like a map, and once the map appears, the path becomes obvious. Her ribs hurt, but pain never clouded her judgment. Pain sharpened it. One of them stepped forward. The same one who had driven his knee into her side. She recognized the way he moved. Someone who relied on cheap blows because he had never learned real technique. Someone who thought dominance came from surprise, not skill. The others watched him, waiting for him to finish what he started. They expected her to shrink under the pressure of attention. Instead, she looked him in the eyes with a quiet stillness that felt heavier than any shout. It was the kind of calm that belongs to people who have been in tougher situations, darker places, colder nights, harsher tests. People who have learned that fear does not decide the next move. She could hear her heartbeat, steady and controlled. She noted the rhythm not because she was scared, but because she was assessing her breathing. She felt the bruise forming under her ribs. A dull throb settling in. It did not slow her. It told her exactly where her body would need to compensate if things escalated. She caught a faint scent of sweat from the guy in front of her, the nervous kind beneath the cologne he had tried to drown it in. His fingers twitched. His posture shifted forward half an inch. A giveaway. An attempt to intimidate without committing. She recognized that kind of bluff instantly. People like him depended on silence from their target. On shock. On confusion. They counted on the moment before reaction. They counted on the fear that fills the gap after the first strike. But she did not give them that gap. She analyzed. She breathed. She prepared. The attack that sparked everything was not just the knee to her ribs. It was the moment they assumed she would remain on the defensive. It was the instant they thought the story had already been written and she was playing the part they assigned her. They had no idea the story had only just begun. They underestimated her the moment they saw her. That was clear from the way their eyes skimmed over her without caution or respect. It was the lazy confidence of people who judged strength by size, posture, clothing, gender, anything except real ability. They saw someone they thought would fold fast and stay down. Someone who would panic. Someone who would make their night easy. Their mistake was not just ignorance. Their mistake was certainty, the kind that blinds you completely. It started with the way they positioned themselves. Too casual, too loose, bodies angled just enough to block her path, but not enough to signal they expected resistance. They assumed she would step back or apologize for taking up space that was never theirs to control. In their minds, they had already won. That kind of arrogance is loud, even when no one speaks. You can hear it in the shuffle of shoes, the tilt of a chin, the slight lean forward that tries to claim territory. She read those signs instantly. They did not. One of them smirked in her direction, a small, mocking grin that said he had already decided what she could and could not do. The second kept his gaze low, as if he did not even need to look at her to measure her. The third stayed behind them, chewing gum, pretending he was not part of the setup even though his body language screamed anticipation. They had done this before. Not to her. Not to anyone capable of pushing back. They picked targets they believed were easy, predictable, harmless. They built their confidence on victories that required no real skill. Victories that depended on fear. She understood their type from the first glance. People who confuse intimidation with dominance. People who mistake silence for weakness. People who think control comes from getting in the first hit, not surviving what follows. She had seen men like them during training. They were the ones who bragged before the hard part started. The ones who talked tough right up until the ocean swallowed their lungs, or the cold numbed their legs, or the instructors pushed them farther than they could imagine. Those men quit. The quiet ones stayed. They misread her calm as inexperience. They misread her steady breathing as fear. They misread her stillness as hesitation. They saw none of the signs that would have warned them. The straightened shoulders. The eyes that were not darting or searching for escape routes. The way she planted her feet. The way her weight shifted with precision instead of nerves. All of it was right in front of them. They just were not trained to see it. Their underestimation deepened when she took the first hit without collapsing. They expected the knee to her ribs to break the moment. Maybe even break her. They expected noise. A cry. A stumble. Something that validated their choice. Instead, she absorbed the pain with controlled breath. She stabilized herself with almost mechanical accuracy. That rattled them more than they realized. They did not understand the kind of person who responds to injury by becoming more focused. The one who hit her watched her closely after that. You could see the confusion creeping in, the tiny cracks forming in his confidence. His friends did not notice at first. They were still feeding off the adrenaline of the attack, still convinced they held all the power in the room. But he felt something shift. He saw a steadiness in her that did not match the reaction he expected. It unsettled him. Not enough to stop, but enough to disrupt the rhythm he thought he controlled. The second one, the one who avoided eye contact earlier, stepped back half an inch. Barely noticeable to most people. But she saw it. A flicker of doubt. A moment of recognition that this was not going the way they planned. The third guy stopped chewing his gum. His jaw tightened. His posture straightened. He was sensing what the others were too slow to acknowledge. Something was off. They still believed they had the upper hand, but the foundation of that belief was cracking. They had counted on her fear. They had counted on her retreat. They had counted on her being the kind of person who gives them control through surrender. Instead, she stood there with the posture of someone who had weathered far harsher conditions than a hallway confrontation. Someone who had been pushed to the edge before and climbed back with more grit than they could imagine. Their biggest miscalculation was simple. They saw an easy target. What stood in front of them was a Navy SEAL who had been shaped by pressure they would never understand. They underestimated the wrong person, and that mistake was already beginning to cost them even before they realized it. Her Navy SEAL mindset did not switch on with a dramatic moment or a heroic burst of energy. It activated the same way it always had, like a quiet, internal lever pulled without hesitation. It was instinct sharpened by years of grit. Pressure had never been something she ran from. It was something she studied, understood, and used. The second their knee hit her ribs, her mind shifted into a mode most people never reach. Not anger, not panic, pure calculation. Her breathing came first, shallow at the moment of impact, then slow, steady, regulated. She had trained to breathe through cold waves that slammed against her chest with the force of concrete. She had learned to keep her lungs controlled even while running miles on sand with no sleep. A hit to the ribs was not enough to unravel that discipline. She adjusted her stance to protect the injured side without announcing it. Training had taught her that even pain can be a tool when handled correctly. Awareness followed next. It expanded fast, clearing out the noise and sharpening the details around her. She noticed the width of the hallway, the places where shadows gathered, the sound of footsteps farther down, the faint vibration of HVAC air pushing through vents. Everything fed into a map her brain built in seconds. The positions of the attackers, their angles, their spacing, their breathing patterns. She could tell who was ready to move and who was bluffing. She could see the leader by the way he angled his shoulders. She could sense the weak link by the way he shifted weight to his heel, not his toes. Navy SEAL training teaches you that chaos is not the enemy. Blind reaction is. She had been conditioned to stand in discomfort without letting it drive her. Instructors had forced her into moments where her body screamed to quit, but the rule remained the same. Control yourself or nothing else will be controlled. In this hallway the rule applied again. She kept her face neutral. She kept her movement intentional. She gave them no clue about what she was preparing. Her hands stayed loose, not clenched. Clenched fists signal readiness. Loose hands suggest uncertainty. She preferred for them to think she was uncertain. Let them misread her. Let them get comfortable. Comfort creates openings. She watched how their eyes tracked her. The first attacker kept glancing at her ribs, waiting for her to protect the injury. She did not. The second kept scanning for backup nearby, hoping no authority was approaching. The third kept shifting as if he wanted to stay involved, but not commit first. All of it was information. Information she could use. Her mindset measured distance. It measured timing. It measured whether her actions would escalate too fast or just fast enough. She did not want a brawl. She wanted control. She wanted efficiency. She wanted to neutralize the threat with minimal damage to herself and minimal chaos spreading to anyone else. That is what real training teaches. Not violence. Efficiency. Her focus narrowed even more when the leader stepped toward her again. His confidence still puffed him up, but it was cracking at the edges. She noted the angle of his hips, the slight twist of his wrist. He was preparing for another cheap strike, maybe another knee, maybe a shove. His movement telegraphed everything. Telegraphed moves are gifts to someone like her. They reveal openings before the action happens. She shifted her weight to her right foot. Subtle, balanced, ready to pivot. Not a stance that looked defensive, but a stance that gave her full control of her next move. Her breathing stayed calm. Her eyes locked on his center of mass, not his face. Faces lie. Bodies do not. She caught the moment his muscles tightened. A fraction of a second. That was all she needed. The Navy SEAL mindset does not wait to see what happens. It reads what will happen. It predicts. It responds before the threat completes itself. Years of drills had taught her to anticipate danger by microseconds, to trust her training over her emotions, to let instinct guide action when thought would slow her down. She did not consider retreat. Retreat was for situations where retreat saved lives. This was not one of those situations. She recognized that standing firm would unsettle her attackers more than backing away. People who prey on weakness crumble when the script changes. Her stillness was the script change. It was the signal that she was not the one in trouble here. They were. Her mind stayed on pace. No rush. No fear. No scattered thoughts. Just purpose. Purpose shaped by nights crawling through mud. By swims in surf that punished every breath. By instructors shouting while she stood shaking but unbroken. That same purpose now filled her veins. She was not thinking about revenge. She was thinking about execution. Precision. Controlled force. The Navy SEAL mindset is not loud. It is quiet. Steady. Cooled by discipline instead of fueled by anger. And in that hallway, in that tense silence after the first hit, that mindset became the most dangerous thing in the room. Everything shifted in a single heartbeat. Split-second decisions are not glamorous or dramatic. They are fast, instinctive, and ruthlessly practical. Once she knew a second attack was coming, her body moved before her thoughts had time to form words. It was the kind of response that comes only from years of pressure, repetition, and discipline drilled deep into muscle memory. There was no plan laid out in her mind. There was only the next correct move. When the leader stepped forward again, she saw the tension build in his shoulders. His weight leaned too far toward his toes. His chest puffed slightly as he prepared himself to strike. It was the same mistake people made when they relied on intimidation instead of technique. They telegraphed everything. She caught the angle of his hips, the shift of his elbow. He was preparing for another knee, maybe aimed higher this time, or a shove meant to send her into the wall. She let him commit to it. Commitment creates openings. Her first decision was simple. Do not absorb the next hit. Redirect the momentum. A small pivot of her right foot gave her balance and room to turn her torso. Not a full spin, just enough to make his attack meet air instead of bone. The second his knee left the ground, she shifted her weight and stepped in, not back. That single step stole his space. People expect you to retreat when attacked. Stepping in collapses their confidence. It changes the entire rhythm. He lost control of his balance before he even understood what had happened. Her hand moved fast, not to strike, but to guide. She pressed lightly against his shoulder, redirecting his forward motion. It was barely more force than a firm tap, but it was placed with precision. His own momentum did the rest. He stumbled to the side, confused, off balance, no longer in command of the situation. Her mind registered the result instantly and moved on. No celebration, no pause, just the next decision. The second guy reacted slower than he should have. He hesitated, waiting for his friend to regain position. That hesitation became her opportunity. She turned her body to face him fully, lowering her center of gravity. Her ribs were still throbbing, but pain was background noise now. What mattered was angle, timing, and control. He raised his hands halfway, as if unsure whether to fight or step back. His uncertainty made his movements soft and predictable. She stepped to her left, moving into his blind spot. People who have never trained rarely understand how to track movement outside their direct line of sight. His shoulders twisted late. His chest lagged behind. By the time he tried to face her, she already had the advantage. She extended her arm just enough to guide him off his own balance point. No punches, no dramatic takedown. Just a precise touch at the right angle that forced him to stumble backward. He hit the wall with a sharp, surprised sound. His confidence cracked. The third attacker froze. Not fully, but enough to reveal the truth. He had no idea what to do without the lead of the first guy. He had come along for the thrill, not the fight. She recognized it instantly. Weak link. Less threat, but still unpredictable. Unpredictable people require attention. She watched his breathing. Fast and shallow. His hands twitched with nervous energy. He wanted to act, but did not want to be the first to try. She kept her eyes on him while still monitoring the other two in her peripheral vision. Her next decision was not about force. It was about positioning. She moved to a spot where all three were in front of her, not surrounding her. That alone took control back. Three attackers are dangerous only when they can flank. Straight-line positioning removes their advantage entirely. She reached that spot with a smooth step and a half-turn, never breaking eye contact. The leader tried to recover his footing, embarrassed and angry. Anger made him sloppy. Sloppy movement is easier to read. He lunged forward with more emotion than intent, and she saw it instantly. His shoulders rose too high. His stride was uneven. His weight was not grounded. She stepped aside, letting his aggression burn out against empty space. Another stumble. Another blow to his pride. He was not used to failing in front of his friends. Every movement she made had a reason. Minimize injury. Maximize control. Maintain awareness. Keep the conflict contained. Her decisions came in rapid sequence, each one guided by training that taught her to stay calm in situations far more dangerous than a hallway ambush. She monitored her breathing again. Steady. Controlled. She checked her injured side. Still functional. Still able to support her stance. Her next choice may have been the most important one. She did not escalate. She did not attack. She made them feel the weight of their misjudgment by letting them fail on their own momentum. She allowed their mistakes to expose their weakness. Split-second decisions turned the situation upside down. What started as an ambush had shifted into a moment where she held every advantage. She stood stable, balanced, and ready, while the three of them scrambled to understand how they had lost control so fast. The realization hit them slowly at first, then all at once. It showed in their posture before it reached their eyes. They expected her to be shaken, hurt, overwhelmed. Instead, she stood calm, balanced, and completely in control. That was the moment the truth started to settle into their minds. They had picked the wrong person, the wrong target, the wrong fight, and the first crack in their confidence widened into something much larger. The leader was the first to sense it. His breath grew uneven, not from exertion but confusion. He had thrown his weight into every move and ended up hitting nothing but air. She had redirected him with a single step, a single shift of her hand. People like him lived off dominance, and when it slipped away even for a second, everything inside them shook. He tried to reassert himself. He squared his shoulders. He clenched his jaw. But that kind of posturing only works on someone who feels threatened. She did not. She simply watched him, and that quiet stare pulled the ground out from beneath him. His friends noticed the change in him before they admitted the change in the situation. The second guy kept his back against the wall longer than he needed to. His eyes darted between her and the leader, searching for cues. He looked like someone waiting for instructions that were no longer coming. The third guy stayed stiff, the gum long forgotten, jaw frozen tight. He kept shifting his feet as if preparing to step forward, but never finding the courage to do it. The confidence they walked in with had drained from their bodies without a word spoken. What shook them most was not what she did. It was what she did not do. She did not yell. She did not panic. She did not lash out with wild strikes. She moved with purpose, with clarity, with a level of control they had never seen up close. They expected fear. They found discipline. They expected chaos. They found precision. That mismatch hit them harder than any punch could have. The leader tried again to close the distance, but his hesitation betrayed him. His movements grew tighter, not smoother. His steps lost rhythm. His posture slouched a little, the first sign that he was no longer sure of himself. She had seen that look before during training, when recruits reached their breaking point. It was the look of someone who realized he was not the strongest person in the space anymore. It was the look of someone who had lost control and did not know how to get it back. The second guy swallowed hard, a small motion but obvious. His hands trembled just enough to expose the fear building behind his forced bravado. He tried to hide it by shifting his weight, pretending he was getting ready for another move. She recognized that shift. It was not preparation. It was panic disguised as readiness. People who intend to act breathe differently. They stay grounded. They look focused. His eyes were wide, unfocused, searching for an exit he did not want to be caught running toward. The third one went silent. He did not even pretend anymore. His shoulders sagged. His stance opened too wide, a defensive posture born from instinct, not experience. He was bracing himself for impact that never came. He was already retreating inside his own mind, playing out scenarios he could not win. Their mistake had been arrogance. Their discovery was truth. And that truth arrived with a cold clarity. She was not an easy target. She was not an outsider they could intimidate. She was trained, disciplined, and capable of dismantling their every move without raising her voice or losing her breath. She saw the moment it clicked for them. A small shift in their faces, a tightening around the eyes, a subtle drop in their chins. That was the instant the fight drained out of them. Not because she forced it out, because they realized they were outmatched in a way that could not be fixed with aggression. They had attacked someone whose calm was stronger than their anger, someone whose skill was stronger than their numbers, someone who did not fear them. The leader stepped back for the first time since the confrontation began. It was unplanned, instinctual, a subconscious retreat he could not hide. His friends noticed. They mirrored him without meaning to. 3 attackers who had closed in on her now found themselves stepping away, adjusting their distance, second-guessing every move they might make next. Their breathing grew louder in the quiet hallway. Short, rapid, unsettled. They were no longer thinking about what they wanted to do to her. They were thinking about what she could do to them. Their minds replayed her movements, trying to understand how she had turned the situation around with such little effort. None of them could find an answer. That was the hard lesson settling in. Strength is not volume, not size, not swagger. Real strength is silent, steady, precise. And now they were standing in front of someone who carried that strength with a kind of control they had never witnessed. Each of them felt it in their bones. The mistake was theirs. The danger was real. And whatever they thought this encounter would be, they now understood it had turned into something they were not prepared for. They learned something in that hallway that no one had ever taught them. Strength is not always loud. It does not always arrive with clenched fists or raised voices. It often stands still, quiet, and unshaken. They had built their confidence on a false idea of power. They measured force by size, noise, numbers. They thought control came from intimidation. They never prepared for someone who carried a different kind of strength, one that did not announce itself but revealed its presence only when tested. When she stood there, breathing steady, posture solid, eyes calm, they saw something they had never recognized before. They saw discipline. They saw a person who understood herself so well that fear could not take hold. They saw someone whose strength came from endurance, from experience, from training that shaped her into a person who responded to chaos with clarity instead of panic. It was the kind of strength you do not see until it is already too late. They kept watching her, waiting for some sign that she was bluffing. A shake in her hands, a tremor in her voice, a stumble in her stance. None came. That silence between all of them grew heavier. The kind of heavy that forces the truth out of people even if they do not want to face it. The truth that she was not the one at risk. She was not the one scrambling for control. They were. The leader's breathing changed again. The anger that fueled him at the start drained away and left something raw behind it. Not guilt. Not yet. Just recognition. Recognition that he had stepped into a situation he did not understand. Recognition that the person he had chosen to attack was operating on a level he could not reach. His chest rose and fell too fast. His shoulders dipped slightly, the first sign of retreat. He tried to cover it with a scowl, but the scowl did not fit anymore. It had lost its weight. His friends felt it too. The second guy pressed his back harder against the wall, as if distance alone could protect him from the moment they were standing in. His earlier confidence had dissolved completely. His eyes kept flicking toward the exit. His hands stayed close to his chest now, not out of readiness, but out of instinct. A protective reflex he could not hide. The third guy shifted his stance again, but it was not the restless swagger he carried before. It was caution, hesitation. He did not want to turn his back to her. He also did not want to get any closer. He was stuck between two instincts that could not coexist. Fear and pride. Pride keeps a person standing. Fear keeps them shaking. He carried both now, and both were visible. What unsettled them most was the lack of aggression in her. They expected payback. They expected a counterattack. They expected a surge of force now that she had the upper hand. But she stayed centered, grounded, controlled. That level of restraint confused them. It told them she did not need to prove anything. People who are desperate to prove strength act impulsively. People who already know their strength stay composed. She stood there like someone who had faced worse storms than 3 men in a hallway. Someone who had endured cold that numbed bones, nights that tested patience, missions that demanded calm under pressure most people would crumble beneath. They could feel it without knowing the details. They felt the weight of her experience in the way she held her ground. That is when the lesson truly sank in. Strength you cannot see is the most dangerous kind. It lives beneath the surface, steady and patient. It does not need to show off. It does not need to threaten. It simply is. And when threatened, it responds with clarity instead of chaos. They realized that the damage they took was not physical. It was internal. Their confidence cracked. Their assumptions shattered. Their sense of control dissolved. They had walked into that hallway believing they were the ones who set the rules. They walked out knowing they never understood the rules at all. The leader lowered his gaze for the briefest second. It was almost invisible, but to her it was clear as daylight. A sign of someone who finally understood the imbalance of power. The The second guy's breathing steadied only when she stopped moving. The third took a small step back when she shifted her weight, a reaction he could not hide. All those tiny movements told the same story. They had learned respect the hard way. Not respect born from admiration, but the kind forced upon someone when the world suddenly shows them how wrong their assumptions were. They saw strength that did not flex, strength that did not shout, strength that had been earned through years of discipline they would never touch. They had kneeled her in the ribs thinking they were in control. But what they discovered was power that needed no performance, power that stood quietly and let them reveal their own weakness. And as they backed away, shaken and unsure, that truth settled into them with a weight they would carry long after the moment ended.